Hi, everybody, and welcome to Sam's Healing Podcast. My name is Sam. I am thrilled that you would join me today, but I'm even more thrilled that someone who I believe has been a pillar in the betrayal trauma community for quite some time. Her name is Tammy Gustafson. So, Tammy, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So, you're very prominent on social media. You obviously care for people in crisis. You have a great story, but for those that maybe are not totally familiar with who you are and what you do, why don't you take a couple minutes, introduce yourself, talk about your qualifications, and then we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, I started out in the counseling realm. I've been a counselor for about 15 years, and my focus, my passion was always PTSD and trauma and EMDR and that sort of thing. So that was my passion for a long time. And then 9 years ago, my marriage almost blew up and my husband's pornography addiction came out. And that was obviously devastating and was the start of a long road of healing. I'm very grateful my husband did the work and we are still together. And he now also works with couples who are dealing with betrayal and recovering from that. But really what that path started to open up for me in this area of betrayal healing. To be honest, I was never one of those women who wanted to use my story for good. I always said my story could die 1,000 deaths. I had no intention of using it whatsoever, but step by step and door by door, things started to open. And now it has really become my main focus and passion. And I am so passionate about helping women in particular who have gone through this to kind of lead them through this path of healing so that they can, I don't know that I like the term get to the other side because I think it's not a fantastic term, but you know what I mean. And so now it's mainly what I do. I still do counseling. I still do PTSD. I still do all that. But a large part of my focus is now focused on helping women pick up the shattered pieces of their heart and find their worth and value after betrayal. And really not just make it through, but also to be able to re-engage with life and see that there is joy and beauty and adventure again on the other side of betrayal.
Well, it took about 3 minutes for you to just go right into hope and a sense of faith and new life. And so I love that. I don't want to overstep the fact, though, that you have what we call a betrayal healing conference coming up that I believe that you have kind of been the one that has birthed that. I know you have a lot of speakers, but for those of you for those of my followers that might be wanting to attend it, tell a little bit more about that, talk about how they can join and all that fun stuff.
Yeah. So the Betrayal Healing Conference is coming up January 22nd through the 26th. And so it's going to be 5 days. It's all online. It's 5 days. We have over 30 speakers and they are fantastic speakers and fantastic human beings who really get betrayal trauma. And so each one of them is kind of taking part of those pieces of healing and doing a deep dive. And so I interview all of them. The conference is totally free. And then everybody has access to the videos for 24 hours. And so really my goal for that was I wanted to gather women who were hurting, and I wanted to gather safe speakers and bring them all together in this space, this online space of the Betrayal Healing Conference, so that women can really deep dive and be able to get their footing, to be able to have guidance to figure out their next steps, and to do it for everybody, whether people can, because a lot of people will never be able to afford counseling and whatnot, but they desperately need insight and affirmation and strengthening. So it is a shame-free, judgment-free zone, and it's going to be powerful.
Now, let me ask you, is it just for women or can betrayed men join? I have a large part who are already teeing it up on their computer going, Sam, she's saying women, she's not saying men. So to all my men out there who are betrayed, before you hit that email, There is a ton of betrayed males in this universe. There's a ton of women who have been addicted to pornography. There are men out there hopeless and despairing. So those of you that are watching or listening, I will never forget about you, nor will Tammy. But for case in point, Tammy, is the conference just for a betrayed female, or can males join as well?
Males are welcome to join. However, the conference is focused on women. And I do, this is such a tender point, right? Because the reality is, for every betrayed woman, there's a betrayed man.
Yeah.
That pretty much that's the reality of it. And there is so little resources for men. So while this is specifically for women, because that's my audience, there are so much that is applicable. And unfortunately, men will have to switch the pronouns. But a lot of the speakers are also very sensitive to that. And a lot of the speakers also say like, hey, even though I'm saying women, because that's typically what I work with, this also applies to men. And we also want to know that they're out there. So,
yeah. And I think you'll agree, you can't treat a betrayed male the same way that you would treat a betrayed female. There's nuances to it. There are some niches to it that have to be addressed. And anybody that has been through it before, and that's another reason why I was so excited to have you come in, because you've been through it and you get it. I don't care how many letters somebody has behind their name. I have worked with so many people who have actually experienced therapist-induced trauma because someone mishandled them and, was not able to care from them because they didn't understand what it was like to be betrayed or even to be unfaithful. So I absolutely love the fact that you have been through it. So as we kind of launch out today, one of the things that I thought that you would bring to the table in a way that would be refreshing and hopeful, but also with a sense of power, is the concept of boundaries. I spend so much time with clients helping them understand how boundaries are to protect them. They keep the bad out, they keep the good in. That boundaries are one of the best ways that they can rebuild their life. So you're on the front lines, you're caring for people every day. You're putting on these massive conferences to help massive amounts of people. Where do you see boundaries fitting into their recovery work?
Well, at the core of betrayal, obviously there's a betrayal of trust, and we think about that and we talk about that a lot. But fundamentally, betrayal is a shattering of boundaries. It's a shattering of agreed upon boundaries of like within our relationship, this is what we agree upon. And betrayal is really stepping outside that boundary. So there's a shattering there, right? And so how I like to view boundaries is really this idea of where I end and where you begin, where I end, where somebody else begins. And so for a betrayed partner, this idea of having to redefine and reestablish boundaries is one of the core things that has to happen after betrayal. And so if we think about it, we think about betrayal within the context of a relationship, that boundaries were betrayed. But then since that has been betrayed, then it becomes a very personal, individualized things of you now as an individual, you now as a betrayed partner, have to set boundaries now to keep yourself safe because all of those were shattered, right?
I love that. You said something that has been on my radar lately, is to say to keep themselves safe.
Yeah.
Now that can seem controversial because some would say, and some even in the field would say, it's your job to make your spouse or partner feel safe. But you said it. I'm going to tee it up for you because I know from what you've already said, what you hold to, but talk about how we keep ourselves safe, because that right there, we could do a podcast on that for 7 days straight.
Right. Yeah. Well, it is the one who did the betraying. They absolutely have a responsibility to do everything they can to provide safety. Absolutely. But the reality is for the betrayed partner, they cannot, especially in the beginning, rely on that person to keep them safe, because the betrayer is the one who fundamentally created a lack of safety and broke all this. So it now becomes the betrayed partner's job. They have to take up that mantle of their own safety, because that partner may do the work. He may be able to come in and provide safety in the future, but he may not. And so, yes, absolutely, it is your job, and you will get your feet underneath you so much faster if you can take that up. And so boundaries is one way to create safety. It's kind of the umbrella, if you would,
Right.
For creating safety.
Now, I find that lots of people have lived a life without boundaries. And so now they find themselves in this Vietnam War of complex PTSD or just PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
And they're being told, hey, you need boundaries. And they're like, what, Tammy, what are boundaries? Like, I've lived my whole life earning love or earning acceptance or tolerating so much. So now, what do I do? So when you help somebody understand how to start to maybe even build boundaries, what are some practical things that you say to those who are trying to wrap their mind around something that to many of them it is foreign as all get out?
Absolutely. Well, and I think before launching into the practical piece, I think we have to stop and pause and evaluate what are your assumptions and your understandings about boundaries. Because so many people, especially if they come from a faith tradition, have been taught, like spoken or unspoken, that boundaries are bad,
Right.
that they're selfish, that they're mean, that they're punishment, that you shouldn't have boundaries. You shouldn't have you shouldn't protect yourself, right? And so it's really important to pause and say, okay, what are my beliefs about boundaries? Because if that's the running script in your head, that will make it really hard to move forward with boundaries if you're fighting yourself the whole time, saying like, oh, this is bad, I'm being mean, I'm being selfish. So those scripts, even when you identify them, those scripts might be playing in your mind, but at least you can recognize them. And I just want to encourage you that they are not mean. They're not mean at all. So boundaries, again, are really tools of safety. It's really redefining yourself. It's redefining what's okay in the relationship. And it's really a path towards healing. And you are worth safety. You are worth having boundaries. Who you are and keeping yourself safe is worthy of that. So I think we have to kind of start. We have to start there.
And I think it's a beautiful point that can be made for the unfaithful that, hey, this is a time for you to have boundaries, because if you're going to prevent relapse, if you're going to create safety, if you're going to help your betrayed partner feel safe at work, when you're out with friends, when you're out playing golf, whether you're traveling for work, would you agree that they have to have rock solid boundaries for their own safety, but also to minister or to create safety for the betrayed as well?
I think the betrayer has to have rock solid boundaries, personal boundaries.
Right.
But one of the things that I see that derails the healing process pretty much immediately is when men start to go, I need to have boundaries with her. I need to have boundaries. She's yelling at me, so I need to set up boundaries. Those boundaries, no. No. As soon as men start doing that too early in the process, like they gave up, they shattered all boundaries. So right now, when they start to do that, that starts to be a real problem. So that's probably a whole nother talk in and of itself.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. There's external boundaries with another person, and then there's internal boundaries with yourself. And yes, the betrayer has to have incredible boundaries with themselves. That's really kind of the fundamental part of recovery, right? Is establishing boundaries for yourself. If I'm not going to do this, and this is the man, the person I want to become.
Right. Because I think it's very often that the unfaithful will say, well, I've blown it. And so I have become a worthless human being. I'm a terrible human being. I've committed the unforgivable sin, both in society and if you subscribe to faith. And so now I'm just such a failure. Then they cascade into shame, when in reality I was always taught there's three recoveries. There's the betrayeds, there's the unfaithful, and then there's the marriages. And so incumbent upon the unfaithful, I think you would agree, is for them to rebuild the system that they completely shattered with their lack of boundaries, which led to the unfaithfulness or the addiction. Because if they don't do their part, the betrayed sits back going, I'm doing all the work and I'm laboring while you are sitting here floundering. Is it your opinion that you will sit with unfaithfuls and say, but encourage them to basically say, look, it's a pretty simple sports phrase. How bad do you want it? Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you're talking about their own self-worth is really important, and the shame. That men getting on top of the shame is kind of a make or break.
Right.
And the reality is for anyone who has been unfaithful, you are not a worthless human being. You are not. You have made bad choices that have hurt the person you love the most. And the key to that is you've got to own it. You've got to lean into it. You have to make restitution. But deep down, finding that part and that belief of going, nope, I still have worth and value. I still have worth and value. I am not, right? It's kind of the shame and guilt thing, right? I am not a horrible person. I am not worthless. I have great worth and value, and I've done these bad things, and now I need to step up and I need to make restitution. I don't know about restitution, but I need to heal. I need to heal myself. Absolutely. And I need to heal the marriage. Absolutely. And help her as much as I can.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. It's sitting with couples going, look, at the end of the day, there was this meme that circled around several years ago. It seems to have come back. It's, you don't get to tell the victim how to heal from your abuse. It's kind of like there's a point where it's like, dude, do you have any idea what you have done to this man or woman? This would be a great time for you to focus on you and be safe for your partner, their anger, their emotions, their pain, their trauma, the time that it takes. And so I think you said that beautifully. Now, we did talk off camera that when you work with couples, oftentimes you will take them through different phases of healing. And I don't know how much time we'll have for you to talk about all of them, but when you talk about phases for couples to walk through, tell the audience a little bit about what that looks like and how it can help them. Because I think what you're doing from the get-go is I find it beautiful the way you are setting expectations for both the unfaithful and the betrayed to go, okay, this helps me have a bit of a bar, a bit of a yardstick to look at what I'm doing. So I love that. I think it's fantastic.
So I call them the betrayal healing phases. And these are actually geared towards the betrayed partner. So personally, I don't actually work with the couple together. I have found that there are some people who have the gift of couples work. That's not my gift. Yeah. My husband's gift. It's not my gift. So I work with the betrayed partners, and this is really the betrayal healing phases walks the woman through kind of the natural progression of what happens for her and in the relationship throughout this process, whether she decides to stay with him or not. So there's 4. The first one is reveal. And that is when the truth about what he has done starts to come out, whether D-Day, discovery, doesn't matter, right? And so that is when the bombshell goes off and she is trying to get the truth. And hopefully a full disclosure happens during that time. But really it's that initial phase of this discovery truth time. And then phase 2 is I call rumble. And that really, the shift in that is really when she now has the full truth, or it now becomes clear that she is not going to get the full truth. And that becomes her new reality. And so the rumble phase is where she is trying to make sense of all this. It is the wrestling. It is the waiting and seeing. It's a phase of like, I don't know if I'm going to stay or I'm going to go. Is he going to do the work? There's all sorts of work that she is doing at that point, including boundaries, but finding her voice, and really wrestling with this and grieving and really doing this deep work of trying to pick up those pieces of going, oh my gosh, this is the reality. And now what do I do with this reality, with this stranger that I thought I knew so well, right? And then phase 3 is resolution. And that's not resolution like we're tying everything up with a bow, but it's that phase where it's that transition of, okay, I know now where the relationship is headed. And it really has 3 paths. It can be healed, kind of that redemption path. There can be divorce, of like he's not doing the work and I just can't. And so there's divorce. Or the third one is this one that's, I think, overlooked the most. And that's what I kind of call the roommates, where he is doing just enough work maybe to keep her in, but he's not really fully healing. And she doesn't want to get divorced. And so they just kind of find this middle ground that is actually pretty torturous. And then the final phase is where everybody kind of comes back together. All women come back together. And this is when she starts to focus back in on herself and her healing. So there's enough stability, whether the marriage is healing or the relationship is healing, whether the divorce has now happened or whether it's just long-term, like whatever. And the focus shifts. And this happens really organically. It's really crazy to watch. But I have women who will just come in and she just kind of organically goes to this place of like, you know what? I need to stop focusing on him. I now need to focus on me. And phase 4 is this beautiful phase where she starts to look around and go like, okay, let's survey the damage. Let's see where it's at. But now I want to look towards the future because I've got one life to live. And so what do I want this one life to live? How do I redefine my life and my future moving forward? And so phase 4 is really this part of her kind of picking up life, and creating a new reality.
So one of the questions that I find that couples or betrayed partners will ask, when you talk about these phases, I think you handcrafted them beautifully. What do you tell the betrayed partner in terms of time span? You know, some people, a great friend of mine and mentor, Rick Reynolds, he would say 18 to 24 months. Some people will say, hey, I won't put a timeline on it because it depends on the severity of the affairs or the amount of the affairs and the history. But it is a worthy question for someone very early on who might be like, what? Tammy, is this the rest of my life? Is this 5 years? I have so many people who will hit this massive amount of grief. You know it. You've been there where they think, I'm never going to heal. I'm never going to get better. So what do you put in terms of a general expectation for time period to heal for the betrayed?
I don't give a time frame. So I have women who ask me all the time, you know, about a time frame, and I always joke with them. I'm like, okay, let me grab my calendar and let's do this. So I think all of those time frames that you've given, I've heard as well. But especially for those early on, I remember really early on, a very wonderful person told me, like, you know, it won't always be this way. It won't always hurt this much. In 3 years, it'll be. And when they said 3 years, I just about like died. I was like, oh my gosh, like it just about put me under the table.
Sure.
But here's the deal. It will take as long. It is going to take a long time. That's the reality. In fact, I did a survey one time of my audience, and one of the questions I asked them is, what do you wish you would have known early on? And one of the top 3 things that they said is, I wish I would have known it would take so long.
Yeah.
And it is a very long process because you're also talking about what is kind of the crisis period versus when that calms. So what I would say is, if you are wanting to stay in the relationship, he had better work hard and fast because you deserve it. And when men are slow in this process, it is utterly torturous, right?
Yeah.
So I think that if a man is doing good work and if the relationship is going to heal, it is possible to get over that initial phase and start to heal and whatnot in that kind of what you're talking about, the 18 to 24 months. I do believe that's possible. But if things are not going well, then this could drag on for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So I think women in their own mind need to know, how long am I willing to give this? I think it's more on their end. How much time am I willing to put in? Not this is how much time you have to stick in for. Like if this isn't better in 1 month, 1 year, 10 years, like what is your line? So I think that's an empowering the woman to say, hey, how long can I stick in there for?
No, I think it's a wonderfully said statement that sometimes we communicate in memes in the society. It's kind of like, it takes what it takes. It's kind of like, look, there's a point where you have to ask yourself, is it worth it? Right? And is it worth the grief? Is it worth the labor? Is it worth just the agony? Looking at your story, when you experienced the betrayal through pornography, was there a turning point where you felt like, I think I'm going to be okay? Was there a point where you felt like, I feel like I'm getting my legs underneath me? I find very few people care for people who have trauma, who haven't experienced either massive amounts of trauma or at least a fair amount of trauma. I know that you have. When did you feel like, I might be okay, I'm getting my legs underneath?
Know that I can pinpoint a time frame. I think where I thought maybe our marriage would make it was about a year in. It was a solid year where I thought maybe this will make it. I think that process of, well, one, I want to pull back for a second. I think it's important to say, I am stronger now than I ever was pre-betrayal. There are aspects of me that emerged that I don't know if they ever would have emerged. Business-wise, personality-wise, strength-wise, interest-wise, that I don't know that they ever would have emerged if the betrayal hadn't happened. So I will never say that I'm thankful for the betrayal. But what I can say is that there was tremendous growth that happened, not in spite of, but because of. So I want to give people that hope and that encouragement that on the other side of betrayal, it is not that this is the end of who you are and this is the end of all good things. It actually, betrayal shatters the good, but it also shatters the bad. It shatters all of those patterns and it gives you a place where you can redefine life and you can explore, you can give yourself permission and empowerment to explore new things and new aspects of life. So there is goodness on the other side. And I think no matter how long it takes or whatever the time frame is for you to decide that you are worthy of pursuing this, you are worthy of moving forward. And also just that continual process of like, okay, who do I want to be? Who do I want to be? And how do I go get it? And that is possible. And man, there is goodness and there is beauty and there is venture on the other side. So I started taking women to Paris who are kind of in that phase 3 or phase 4 to help them jumpstart this. because I wanted them to see like, no. And every one of them says like, I don't believe you. I don't believe you that there's good life ahead. And I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to. I'm going to hold that for you. But there he is. There he is. And it is so awesome to see time and time again, women who go from thinking my life is ruined, I will never smile or be happy again, to go on the other side of going, nope, I have got this thing by life, or I've got this thing called life, and I am moving forward with it.
You know, I ask every guest at the end to take a minute to just kind of pour their heart out with hope and encouragement. And I don't think I need to ask, because I think that was probably my most cherished moment of our time together, is what you just said, just the raw heart of a warrior that says, hey, this is awful, but I am someone I never thought I could be or would be in light of the trauma that I was subjected to. I think it gives an incredible message of hope, of the power to overcome, which in life, if there's one thing that I think we need, is the power to overcome. So I think that was just my favorite part of our time together, and I cannot thank you enough. So for people that want to follow you, people that want to learn more about you, tell them about your social media handles, your website, and then one more plug for the conference that you have coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is betrayalhealing.com. I am on Instagram mainly, and that's Tammy L. Gustafson. And then the other, this should be part of my website, but it's a different. So Nathaniel and I do, the only couple stuff I do is with Nathaniel, and we do a webinar series called Both Sides of the Story. So if you want to check that out, that is primarily for couples, and that's bothsidesofthestory.co. And then, for any betrayed partner who is listening, I would highly recommend that you join us at the Betrayal Healing Conference. You're going to come out the other side feeling like, okay, I'm not alone. I've got this. I know, like you've said before, there's so many women who come to my office who have been hurt by therapists, well-meaning, or faith leaders or whatnot. And I promise you, I interview every single one of them. I know what they say. It's safe, and you will be empowered. So come join us.
Awesome. Tammy, thank you so much for coming in. I think that this will be such a deep breath moment for so many who have been betrayed, but so many unfaithful that are looking for hope and insight and direction and some clarity. There's no cheat code, but there are some real good, helpful bits of information for them when they get it, to go, okay, if I can use this, I can really gain some ground. So once again, thank you so much for coming in. This was a beautiful picture of healing and overcoming. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.